Hello everybody, Mobius1 here, bringing you my second Star Wars Unlimited Shadows of the Galaxy card preview video. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at 8 cards that were revealed to us back in mid-April, and among those cards, a couple of them have what I would consider Shadows of the Galaxy's most exciting new keyword, Smuggle. If you're new to the channel, I do all sorts of Star Wars gaming content, but I am going to be posting a lot more Star Wars Unlimited, including gameplay videos, deck techs, and card preview videos like this. So if you want to see more, don't forget to like and subscribe. But with that out of the way, let's take a look at the first card. The first card we're taking a look at in this episode is Crosshair from Bad Batch. She's a 4-cost 2/6 unit with 2 activated abilities. One of them, spend 2 resources, and this unit gains +1/+0 for this phase, and the other one requires you to exhaust him, and this unit deals damage equal to his power to an enemy ground unit. First things first, super flavorful. I love the fact that his second ability allows him to essentially attack units without being attacked back. Crosshair is a sniper, so that makes sense. 4 cost for a 2/6 body is a little interesting. I don't think we have anything exactly at those numbers in Spark of Rebellion. It does seem a little weak. The 6 health is decent, but only 2 attack for 4 is a little not great. And even though you can pay to increase his attack power, the conversion rate of paying 2 resources to only give him 1 extra attack, and it only lasts until the end of the phase, is again underwhelming. Now, admittedly, it's not a perfect comparison, but you could compare him a little bit to Rook, who is a 5-cost 3/6 shielded. Now, yes, it's not a perfect comparison. Rook does cost 5, while Crosshair costs 4. But with Rook, you're not only getting that extra 1 attack permanently, that you would have to pay 2 more for on Crosshair, but you're also getting a shield token, and while he can't snipe people the way Crosshair can, if he does any amount of damage to a defending unit, that unit is defeated, a non-leader unit. Rook was played a little bit, at least, a couple months ago, but I think as the meta has kind of evolved over the past 2 or 3 months, Rook has just he's been cut from a lot of lists because he's simply too slow. I really just don't see a world in where you feel good playing Crosshair for 4, and then maybe on the next turn paying extra resources to buff his attack and then exhausting him to just deal like maybe 4 or 5 damage to 1 target. You would end up paying, 4 to 6 extra resources on top of his initial cost in order to deal with your opponent's 4 or 5 drop. As much as I love Crosshair and as flavorful as I think the card is, I just think it's a little too expensive and too slow to work. I can see a world in where you run Crosshair in like some sort of control deck and you just play him late in the game when you don't really have any other cards to play. That way you can exhaust 10 resources at a time to buff his attack by 5 and then pick off 7 HP units while your other units attack the enemy base. But even then, you have to remember that paying 2 to buff his attack by 1 is an action. So if you plan on doing anything substantial with Crosshair, you're essentially giving initiative away to your opponent. And really, we're not gonna give the Bad Batch units Clone Force 99 traits or Bad Batch traits. We gave the Rebels crew Spectre traits. Yeah, they're clones, but shouldn't they have some sort of special trait synergies? I don't know. That feels a little disappointing to me, but ultimately that's my own issue. All right, the second card we're taking a look at is Cartel Turncoat, a 1-cost 2/3 space unit with Bounty, draw a card. Now, Bounty is one of Shadows of the Galaxy's new keywords. In the last episode, we looked at the Wanted card, which also featured the Bounty keyword. Bounty is essentially a reward that your opponent would collect when defeating one of your units with Bounty. Now, in the case of Wanted, you would play that card onto an opposing unit so that when you defeated that unit, you would get the bounty. In the case of Cartel Turncoat, the bounty comes baked into the card itself as a drawback. Cartel Turncoat can most easily be compared to Alliance X-Wing, which is also a 2/3 space unit but it costs 2 instead of 1. So Cartel Turncoat is being discounted by 1 resource. However, when your opponent defeats it, they get to draw an extra card. And I gotta be honest, that's a pretty good card. Discounting a card's cost by 1 isn't really a lot when you're talking about expensive cards. Like, discounting an 8 cost card to a 7 cost card is still good, but it's not nearly as good as discounting a 2 cost card to a 1 cost card. In that second case, you're cutting that card's resource cost in half. Think about it. If you have 2 Cartel Turncoats in your opening hand, you can play both of them on turn 1 and have a total of 4/6 stats in space turn 1. And I gotta tell you, I think there's probably going to be a Cunning Heroism aggro deck out there that's gonna plan to do exactly that. I mean, there's a Cunning Sabine deck out there right now that's running Green Squadron A-Wing, and playing Green Squadron A-Wing on turn 1 is one of the most powerful turn 1 plays you can make with that deck. On top of that, drawing cards in card games is obviously a powerful effect. However, in Star Wars Unlimited, it's not quite as powerful as it is in other card games like Magic the Gathering, where you have lands that are taking up card slots in your deck. On top of that, we draw 2 cards each turn, so while drawing cards is still a good effect in Star Wars Unlimited, it's not as highly valued as it might be in other card games. There is one significant difference, however, between Cartel Turncoat and both Alliance X-Wing and Green Squadron A-Wing, and that is its traits. Both the Alliance X-Wing and Green Squadron A-Wing are rebel units, whereas Cartel Turncoat is an underworld unit. And that fact will definitely hurt its chances of being included in the Cunning Sabine aggro deck, because that deck does run a lot of rebel synergies. However, once we see all the cards coming in Shadows of the Galaxy, if there's still enough support to make a Cunning Heroism aggro deck, and that deck doesn't rely on any rebel synergies, I think Cartel Turncoat will be a staple in that deck. Next, we have Unexpected Escape. This is a 1-cost event that says exhaust a unit. You may rescue a captured card guarded by that unit. So also in the last episode, we looked at the Mandalorian's Rifle, which was a 3-cost upgrade that, if attached to the Mandalorian, would allow the Mandalorian to capture an enemy unit by putting them face down underneath him. Capturing is another new mechanic coming in Shadows of the Galaxy that is basically a form of temporary removal. Typically, if one of your units captures an enemy unit, when your unit is defeated, the captured enemy unit would return to your opponent's board exhausted. Unexpected Escape here bypasses the need for you to defeat that unit and lets you simply exhaust them and rescue the captured card immediately. This is a really difficult card to evaluate given the current card pool, simply because we don't know how good capturing units is going to be. If we get a bunch of cards that are capturing units left and right, then obviously Unexpected Escape is going to be super powerful counter to that. On the other hand, if capturing units isn't really a thing when Shadows of the Galaxy comes out, then Unexpected Escape is nothing more than a 1-cost exhaust a unit. In that case, we can compare it most closely, I think, to Asteroid Sanctuary. Maybe No Good to Me Dead, but I would say Asteroid Sanctuary is probably the closest thing you can compare it to, which Asteroid Sanctuary, 2-cost exhaust an enemy unit and then give a shield token to a friendly unit that costs 3 or less. So in this sense, we're paying 1 less, just like we were just talking about with Cartel Turncoat and Alliance X-Wing, but we're missing out on giving the shield token to a friendly unit, which also typically costs about 1 resource. So ultimately, I think Unexpected Escape, even without the rescuing the captured card portion of it, just simply the pay 1 to exhaust a unit, I think is fair. The problem is, would you really want to run a 1-cost exhaust a unit card in your deck? And for that reason, I think this card is pretty bad. Again, we're going to have to wait and see just how powerful capturing enemy units is. And if that is a powerful effect, then Unexpected Escape becomes better. But for now, I think this is, I think it's pretty bad. All right, it's finally time to talk about another new keyword coming in Shadows of the Galaxy, Smuggle. Let's take a look at Privateer Crew. Privateer Crew is a 2-cost 2/2 with Smuggle. And Smuggle has a cost, in this case, 6 with the command aspect. We'll talk about that in a second. And it says, if this card is a resource, you may play it for its smuggle cost, replace it with the top card of your deck. And then it says, when played using Smuggle, give 3 experience tokens to this unit. All right, so let's talk about Smuggle as a mechanic because it's pretty awesome. Basically, cards with Smuggle allow you to resource them early on in the game and use them as resources as you would normally. But at any point later in the game, once you can afford its Smuggle cost, you can then play that card from your resource zone into play as if it was in your hand, and then replace it with the top card in your deck so that you're not, reducing your total number of resources. That means cards with Smuggle give you a ton of flexibility because Privateer Crew is both a 2-cost 2/2 and a 6-cost 5/5. The question, however, especially in this case, is that flexibility worth it? Because we have Underworld Thug, which is a 2-cost 2/3. Similarly, we have Steadfast Battalion, which is a 5-cost 5/5 with the benefit of having both Overwhelm and an on-attack ability that triggers if you have a leader unit. So in order for Privateer Crew to be worth putting into your deck, you're going to need to decide whether the flexibility of playing it either as an early 2-drop or playing it later from your resource zone as a 6-drop is worth playing a suboptimal unit in either case. I'm going to say that that's probably not worth it. This particular card, Privateer Crew, I think is probably pack filler, not very good, but it is a very good card to demonstrate the Smuggle mechanic and how awesome it actually is. So let's take a look at another one and see if this one's any better. This is Vigilant Pursuit Craft. It is a 5-cost 3/5 space unit with Sentinel, and it also has Smuggle with a cost of 7. So Vigilant Pursuit Craft doesn't gain any special keywords or experience tokens or anything if played using the Smuggle mechanic like the last card did. It's simply giving you the flexibility of playing this card after having resourced it if you need to. Again, if we compare that to existing cards that we already have, such as System Patrol Craft, which is a 4-cost 3/4 space unit with Sentinel, I mean, even just playing it from hand, Vigilant Pursuit Craft, you're paying 1 extra resource for 1 extra HP. That's not good. And if you choose to smuggle it, you're paying 3 extra resources for 1 extra HP. It's really bad. Yes, you can surprise your opponent by playing it from your resource row, but I love the mechanic. I don't think this is a good card. And the only other difference between these two is System Patrol Craft is a fighter and Vigilant Pursuit Craft is a transport. That's totally irrelevant at this time, but who knows, maybe when set 4 or 5 comes out, if there's some sort of upgrade that synergizes to transport vehicles, maybe then Vigilant Pursuit Craft will become meta. But until that day, I don't think we're going to see much of Vigilant Pursuit Craft. A card that we might see a little bit more of, though, is Timely Intervention, which is a 1-cost event that says play a unit from your hand, give it ambush for this phase. And then it also has Smuggle with a cost of 2. I think this card is going to see quite a bit of experimentation. I don't know if it's good enough to stick around or if it'll be competitive, but I would definitely wager some credits on this card being played quite a bit on initial launch. The only thing that we have to compare this to really is the rare command base Energy Conversion Lab, which has the once per game epic action, play a unit that costs 6 or less from your hand, give it ambush for this phase. So Energy Conversion Lab is touted as like being the best base in Star Wars Unlimited currently. So is paying 1 and a card worth the once per game effect of Energy Conversion Lab? And on top of that, the fact that it has Smuggle means that you could just resource this early on in the game and just know that at any time you have the option of paying an extra 2 resources to play this card and ambush with anything in your hand. I think a lot of people would say that that's not worth it, but I think what they're not considering is that when you're playing Energy Conversion Lab, your opponent knows that you have that ability, that you have that option of giving something ambush, and they can play around that. If your opponent doesn't know that you've resourced Timely Intervention, When you choose to reveal that and then play something with ambush, yeah, you paid 2 extra resources for it, but your opponent might be caught completely off guard. I think that element of surprise, that way that, you know, your opponent has no way of playing around that because they don't know whether you've got that option on the table, I think there's some value to that. So I don't know. I don't know if timely intervention is going to be top tier, but it's going to see play. It's going to see experimentation at the very least. And I think that there is a strong possibility that this card will be competitively viable in the right deck. The last Smuggle card we're going to be looking at in this episode is Hotshot DL44 Blaster. It is a 1-cost upgrade that says attached to a non-vehicle unit. It has a Smuggle cost of 3 with the Cunning aspect, and then when played using Smuggle, attack with the attached unit. And on top of all that, it gives whatever unit you attach it to +2 attack, +0 HP. So what makes this card stand out from the other Smuggle cards we looked at is the aspect color for the Smuggle mechanic on this card is different than the aspect color of the card itself. And it's been confirmed that when you play this card, the only aspects that matter are dependent on how you're playing it. So if you're just playing Hotshot DL44 Blaster from your hand, as long as your base or leader has the aggression aspect, you won't be paying the tax. However, if you're running Hotshot DL44 Blaster in a Cunning deck without the aggression aspect, as long as you resource it and then only play it through the Smuggle mechanic, you won't be taxed on the fact that your deck isn't running aggression because it's the Cunning aspect that's being looked at when you smuggle the card into play. And then on top of that, when you smuggle the card into play, because of the effect, you get to attack with the attached unit right away. Simply for that last reason, I think the only card that we can compare it to currently is Snapshot Reflexes, which is also a 1-cost upgrade that gives the attached unit +1/+1, and then when played, you may attack with the attached unit. This card isn't in a ton of decks, however, I have seen it played. You have to remember that in order to get the when played attack with an attached unit effect for Hotshot DL44 Blaster to trigger, you need to smuggle it into play, which means you're not going to be paying 1, you're going to be paying 3. So just like all the other Smuggle cards we looked at in this episode, the question is the flexibility worth the added cost? In this case, it might be, because we know that there's going to be a lot of upgrade synergy with a lot of the cards in this set. So maybe Hotshot DL44 Blaster can find a slot in an upgrade deck that wants to have the option of smuggling cards into play somehow. Or I don't know if there's any other Smuggle synergy cards out there yet, but as we go over more cards in the set, we'll find out. The last card I want to take a look at in this video is This Is the Way, a 2-cost event that says search the top 8 cards of your deck for up to 2 Mandalorian and or upgrade cards, reveal them and draw them, then put the other cards on the bottom of your deck in a random order. We talked a little bit earlier about how card draw in Star Wars Unlimited isn't as powerful as an effect as it is in other card games. However, card draw and tutoring, which is drawing specific cards from your deck, there's a fine difference between them. We do already have a card that has a very similar effect to this in Spark of Rebellion, which is Prepare for Takeoff, a 2-cost event that allows you to search the top 8 cards of your deck for up to 2 vehicle units, reveal them, draw them, put the other cards at the bottom of your deck in a random order. However, vehicle units, we don't really have a vehicle deck in the meta yet. I kind of tried fooling around with that on Force Table, made like a Luke Skywalker command vehicle deck. It's fun, but I don't think it would do very well in a competitive environment. However, I have seen some command Boba decks running Recruit, which is a 1-cost event that lets you search the top 5 cards of your deck for any unit, reveal it, draw it, and so on. And I have seen this card played in decks at store showdowns. The fact that This Is the Way allows you to draw not only Mandalorian cards, but also upgrade cards means, again, if we get an upgrade deck that's competitive, or a Mandalorian deck, or a Mandalorian upgrade deck, which seems to be the case, This Is the Way might actually make it into that deck. And let's not ignore the fact that This Is the Way has the Mandalorian trait itself, which means if at any point in this set we see a card that allows you to discount the cost of Mandalorian cards, this is the way it becomes exponentially better as it gets cheaper. I can 100% imagine a world in where there's a Mandalorian unit that says, you know, when played, the next Mandalorian card you play this phase costs 2 less, and then this is the way it becomes free. Maybe that's my Hearthstone background talking, but I can still see it happening. Anyway, that's going to be it for this episode. Some really cool stuff. I'm really excited. I love the smuggle mechanic. I think the bounty keyword is really cool, especially since we're seeing cards that are being printed with the bounty keyword baked into the card itself so that you're getting a discounted card with some sort of drawback on it. The more cards we preview, the more apparent the synergies are going to become, like with the upgrades and the Mandalorian traits. The first card we took a look at was Crosshair, so I can't wait to see the rest of the Bad Batch units. Let me know in the comments which of these cards we looked at in this video are your favorite. Let me know your thoughts on the new mechanics. If you have any cool card ideas, I'm interested to hearing them as well. And stay tuned for the next video as well. We're going to try and get through the whole set before it drops in July. I got a lot of work ahead of me. Well, that's it for this one. Thank you all for watching. Mobius1 here. And I'll see you in the next one.